that stuff is very concerning to me. And watching stuff like you mentioned the Church Committee and COINTELPRO going on, do you think about what we could even uncover 20, 30 years from now? That's the stuff that also scares me. What they're doing today that we don't know about, that in 20 or 30 years we might uncover.
I know.
It's pretty wild.
I know. No, it is when you think about, I mean, I try not to at this point. And again, it keeps me sane by just staying in the past. If I
Right.
thought about what's going on in the present, I would try to figure it out, and then I'd never do anything except this, which I practically only do anyway.
And part of it, I mean, when I was writing and still am researching the serial killer case I was telling you about, there's a point at which you feel like you might be untethered from reality. And maybe you experience that or not, but I'm looking at your book, I'm looking at the Tate LaBianca murders and all of the bizarre coincidences that take place. And like, I don't really believe in coincidences, but I was just thinking about this while rereading Chaos, I mean, and they're weird and they could just be nothing, but Rosemary LaBianca, Polanski did Rosemary's Baby the year before. He's in London doing a movie, or he was going to do a movie called Day of the Dolphin or something, which was about assassinating the president based on
John Lilly's research.
John Lilly is doing LSD experiments as well. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre to me that all those things line up like that, and I can't help but spin out of control sometimes. And maybe it is just by chance that's happening.
Well, I can't tell you how many cops said to me, and I know I quote one in the book, that there's no such thing as coincidence. Cops told me that's what we work on. If it looks like a coincidence, usually. But then again, I have long emails from people who say, well, this person lived there when that happened in that decade, and they were a third cousin of this person. I'm like, my mind's just scrambling.
You could only take so much. But unless I'm wrong, the LaBianca murders are believed to be random, right? Like they didn't pick them for any reason.
I don't believe that, but that's the official.
That's the official narrative. And what can you say? What you believe?
I did not put a lot about the LaBianca murders in the book, which I felt kind of embarrassed by myself and ashamed of, because they deserve more attention. But I didn't have enough of the pieces in place. Not that I do now. I have a lot more, but I still am not. I'm convinced that they were targeted. And that it wasn't a couple that was just picked because of proximity to another house that Manson was familiar with.
Right.
I was talking to you off camera about, a second book.
Yep.
They're going to get their due justice
in
the second book.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel, I really hope that happens. I really look forward to a second book. And I also don't think it was random. And even though it sounds silly perhaps to some, the fact that her name was Rosemary just makes me feel like it all seems so methodically absurd,
Yeah. The parallels to the Rosemary's Baby and her getting impregnated,
Yes. Everything. I mean, and there's no way for anyone to know, and I think this has been documented. I know you mentioned it in the book about Roman Polanski on the night of the murders in London giving the story about a friend's death and then saying you never know who's next, and then he gets a phone call. Like, obviously you can't plan that. But it's just insane.
I didn't find that out on my own. That was published. I can't remember what my source is, but it'll be in the end notes. But he did say that. Oh, I think he said something like "eeny, meeny, miny, mo," who will be the next to go, something like that.
Oh, right.
And then his behavior, I won't get into it now because it's really getting into the weeds. But he did some really strange stuff in the weeks and months after this. I don't know what it means, and I stay away from it in the book because I didn't want to get that fantastical, but it's something I do kind of revisit a lot. And I had a chance to interview him years ago, and I was told by his contact, his producing partner who had been with him for decades, that he said, you'll never persuade me to recommend Roman talk to you, but I'll talk to you for 5 minutes. He met with me at the Beverly Wilshire, and the 5 minutes turned into 2 or 3 hours.
Oh,
and at the end of it, he said, you've got enough new stuff that I'll tell Roman to talk to you, and he will, but you've got to wait until you put everything together, because you can only do it once. He'll get really upset. It'll give him, he'll be in a black mood for months after, but I want him to answer this, but wait until you're ready. Don't jump the gun. So I waited, and then it became too late because then he had the thing where he was held in house arrest in Sweden or Switzerland, and then
Yeah.
he just completely stopped talking to the press. And
Mm.
then he's been Me Too'd, and
Yeah.
he can't even release the film here. So I could still try him through a couple people, but I
Yeah.
don't think he's ever going to tell me anything. I don't know. It's one of those things that's kind of in my back pocket. Like, should I try one more time? Because who
Yeah.
knows
I
how
think
long
it's
he's
worth
going to
it.
be.
I think it's
I
worth
know it
it.
is. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like talking to all these people, I think is so worth it because you created a whole new picture. You know, like the person who owns the house, and from the beginning of the book and then to the end when you talked about Bugliosi, I think threatening them with a smear campaign
Oh, yeah.
to discredit
He threatened
you.
Rudy Altobelli and
Right.
me. He was trying
It's
to get
just,
Rudy to sign a document saying he hadn't said what he said to me. And I have that document. Rudy gave it to me.
which is exactly what Bugliosi did to the mistress.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
things, which is the government does it. It's interesting to me. The thing about Manson that always did interest me was that crime was a symbol for America, right? It's like a time capsule of paranoia and violence and
Oh,
the
yeah.
downfall of an age of quote unquote innocence, right? And your book kind of explodes all of that even to a bigger picture where it's like, and maybe you felt this way, that crime seems like you could go on forever and ever in the tentacles of the CIA, the government, evil in general, all these experiments. It's like just one section of like a much longer intestine, right?
It bled
Which
into
is
so
baffling.
much other stuff. Yeah, I shouldn't use the word bleed. I guess that's a pun or something. But
Right. But
yeah,
seriously, I mean, it has bled into the American consciousness, and I think you see it in the beginning. Like once you look at just this case, the Charles Manson case, you will see it everywhere. It's still referenced today. He's up there with all the other evil. He's on the Rushmore of evil, right?
oh
And
yeah,
everyone
that's
talks
I
about
could
him.
have used that in the book, The Rushmore of Evil. That's how my editor, I didn't want to do it when she assigned it as a magazine story, and she said, just pay attention now. You don't realize how often you hear Charles Manson reference, but you're gonna start noticing it in magazines and TV
Hmm.
shows. He was the boogeyman, for the last century. He was the epitome of evil, and that
Right.
was really thanks to
Any
Vince Bugliosi.
connection? Sorry, to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or
Oh yeah, they talked. Tarantino.
Oh, Tarantino, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We talked after he'd made the film, but he
Right.
was
okay,
writing a novelization of
Hmm.
the script, and then
right?
he finally, my book had gotten to him before his film came out, and before my book was published, but when we had a galley, but he was too busy to read it. I had two friends who were friends with him because he was releasing that film, but
Mm-hmm.
a year or two later, he's in Israel locked down because he and his wife went there to visit her
Right.
family and they couldn't come back because of the COVID
Wow.
restrictions. And that's when he decided he had all that time to do the novel and then he read my book and starts calling me like in the middle of
That's
the night to
awesome.
ask me questions. It was fun, except, he was calling me to ask me questions and he did most of the talking.
Were you like, why did you make that ending that way?
I,
Got it wrong.
yeah,
I
I
love it.
never asked him about that, but I
Yeah.
probably should have. Maybe I'll have
He-
another chance.
Yeah.
Well, I hope Chaos is going to be a documentary. Maybe, I don't know if
It
you can
is,
say.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's being made for Netflix. It's supposed to come out. It's supposed to come out not this past fall, the fall before, then this fall, and now they're telling me maybe this winter.
Wow.
Okay. Hey, that's cozy. Something to watch in the winter.
Wow. My other takeaway from the book is that I do believe that Manson was created in a lab basically, and obviously I don't know for sure, but it's almost like they created a monster to destroy an entire sense of comfort, even the American dream to some regard, even the destruction of the family, which is weird to me because they called it the family, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that was all on purpose, but it was used in a way to be like, we're going to destroy America. Is like, I think you mentioned this in the book, or you said it in an interview, but Joan Didion said famously, America died on August 9th, right?
I think she said that, she woke up and she got a call about the murders the day of, and, she famously lived in LA then.
Right.
And she said that's when she knew that the 60s had ended. It was like
Right.
symbolic of the violence, the overindulgence and freedom. And I don't think she was making a moral judgment. She was just
No.
saying it had to lead to something like this.
Right. Yeah, it's the culmination, and she obviously I don't think was thinking this, but it seems to me like the culmination of what was going on in Laurel Canyon, And have you read the weird scenes inside the canyon?
Yeah, I mean, I know people always want me to reference that book.
Right.
He was dead, when I finally got it. McGowan.
Right. Yeah.
I would have loved to have talked. And the problem is he doesn't source a lot of his information.
I know.
And I'm really careful to do that. So I got frustrated with the book, and it was a long time ago that I actually read it. Yep. But there were too many leaps of faith that he was asking the reader to go along with.
Agreed.
But there's good stuff in there. I mean, there's good reporting. But yeah, that's what she was talking about.
It is pretty good. But yeah, there's lots of things where you're just like, well, I'm easily, it could be this or that. And that's a big leap of faith. But it's interesting, it's a good diving board into what was going on and may or may not have been going on in Laurel Canyon with Mountain Look Observatory.
So I give him credit because it's not easy to get that kind of narrative out there in the world. People don't want to publish that stuff.
Yeah. So hopefully we get a second book from you on this stuff.
Well, I mean, I haven't committed to it yet, but I'm pretty close to committing. I just want to make sure I have enough answers this time.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is work. I mean, I thought I'd stop, but it's been 5 years, and I work every day trying to get more and more information. So if I don't do a second book, it'll almost be, I can't remember if we were talking about it on camera or off, Joseph Mitchell.
That was right before,
the second book, with the second book never published.
Yeah, for those who don't know Joseph Mitchell, it's a great writer who never finished his magnum opus, I guess, that took him 40 years and then he died and never published it again, anything actually for those years. But I'm really looking forward.
Every writer's biggest fear is that they're never going to finish or publish whatever they're working on for so long that they pretty much dedicate their life to.
Right. Well, you get swallowed by these insane stories, and it's hard to leave. And then I'm like, I think you said publicly, once you publish something like this, you're then inundated by people who have information or think they have information. Yeah. Like I was saying to you earlier, in my serial killer reporting, I call them grief whores. There's people who like attach themselves to the story. They have no reason of being involved, but they've attached themselves because they like being around this like psychotic grief stuff. You have to weed them out.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've experienced a few of those.
Reporters were saying, "Give us Rex," or "We want Rex." What did?
Yeah. So when they finally apprehended who they believed to be the Long Island serial killer, I went to the courtroom to see him appear before the judge, and it took a while for him to come out in cuffs. He's this giant man. And so while it was taking so long, I'm sitting in the courtroom surrounded by all like the corporate press types, and they're dressed nice and they're writing for local news stations. They started chanting, "We want Rex."
That's amazing. That's like a scene from a Day of the Locust movie or something.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. It is. It reminded me of people, barbecuing and selling merchandise outside of Ted Bundy's execution.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It says a lot about it's so much like in Chaos. You learn so much about the dark side of the authorities, the actual evil that's being perpetrated, the audience, people who think they know stuff, the media. Yeah. It says it's a symbol for America. That's why I think your book is so important. And I really thank you for writing it.
Oh,
and
thanks. Yeah.
I thank you for joining us tonight. I feel like I could talk to you for a very long time about all this stuff. But we will let you go. And I hope people find Chaos. If you haven't read this book, please find it. It is literally one of my favorite books. I recommend it all the time. I bought it for people for Christmas.
I just bought it for Father's Day. I'm not supposed to say that on air.
Yeah, it's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like ruining people's Christmases by this very dark story, but I think it's important.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I really do think it's very important, and it's a great way for people to be introduced to a lot of nefarious things that are happening, and good questions to be asking about yourself, the government, the media, authorities, everything. So, Tom, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Tom.
And
thank you guys for having me. That was fun. I mean, fun, but it was fun.
It was a really fun talk.
It's just great to get asked questions by informed people who kind of understand it.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, we'll have to do it again at some point when you have your second book out. Hopefully, not too long from now.
Hopefully, we'll be alive. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have you back. But thank you very much, and until next time.
Bye, Tom.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
man. Oh man, that was incredible. Seriously,
that was great.
One of my legit one of my favorite writers. And
he
I think
was awesome.
He's done so much for people getting plugged into the idea that the government is not who they say they are.
Yeah.
Shocking, because we talk about it a lot. I write about it a lot, and it's hard for me. I go to like my kids' birthday parties, and it's people asking what I do, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm talking about MK
conspiracies.
Ultra and Charles Manson, I'm talking about all this ridiculous stuff.
I'm like, it's not really my thing, but now I can't sleep at night. So.
Yeah, sorry. Nancy's like, you gotta, we're at a children. I'm like, these people need to know, Nance. All right, I need to know who I can hang out with or not. But Tom did such a great job in that book of making the audience, question for themselves without beating you over the head with what he thinks is the answer. Yeah. Which is what everyone else tries to do. Yeah. Not everyone, but in the corporate press or in, read Vincent Bugliosi's book.
That's a terrible.
It's a hard name to look into, but it's worth reading his stuff as well to see what they think the official narrative is. It's worth looking at the corporate press to see what they're saying because you have to piece all these things together for yourself.
Yeah,